Juan Carlos Bermudez. I'm the mayor of the city of Doral, and I just became 55 this Monday. Being the first mayor was, I became the first mayor really because I was involved in, when I moved to Doral. After a while, seeing there were no schools, no parks, and you can see in that picture over there what Morgan Levy Park, what today's Morgan Levy Park looked like. So we really had no place for our kids to, my children had no place to play, our girls had no place to play, there were no schools. So I got involved in the incorporation movement at the time here in Doral, which had failed the first time that Doral had tried to incorporate. They were kind of left at the altar, for want of a better term, the day that Pinecrest, Sunny Isles, and there was a third city, Aventura, were all incorporated, or permitted to move forward on incorporation. Doral and two other municipalities were denied that right. And at that point, some of the business community wasn't really supportive of it. So I got involved in the process of helping the incorporation movement. We ended up starting a group called One Doral. We incorporated the business community, which had objected to the process. In the interim, I got elected, first appointed and then elected to the Doral Community Council, which had a decision-making process for some of the zoning and land use decisions in the area, and against a group that had been there a long time. Became the president of One Doral, and at that point, the incorporation movement moved forward with the help of One Doral and the West State Federation, which was another group. At that point, everybody asked me, well, now we need you to be the first mayor. So I ran. There were two other individuals, and I won. Actually, I think everybody that was affiliated with One Doral won, and we ended up having our first council, which in January 28th of 2003 was when the vote took place to permit us to incorporate, which passed overwhelmingly. And then in June was the approval of the charter, city charter, and then in July was the election. And I ended up being the first mayor in a room of 300 people, some who were supportive, some who weren't. During this campaign, I had the opportunity to knock on over almost 3,000 doors and have numerous community meetings. And, one of the things I always tell people, like I did the first time I ran, I make you only 3 promises. I'm going to be honest, I'm going to work hard, and I'm going to listen to you. Unlike, other people in politics, I'm not going to promise that I'm going to agree with you all the time, because, if you see a politician that says yes to everything, run in the other direction, because they're not being very honest and they're not good elected officials. The 3 things that we're going to focus on getting back is obviously, number 1, growth is good, but it has to be planned and controlled. We had a master plan that included this area becoming a downtown area. Part of that master plan has been either changed or certainly circumvented. We need to get back to a logical process where the growth is going to happen, but it has to be planned and controlled, because we have serious traffic issues. We're in the middle of Dade County, right west of the airport. And, we just can't, you just can't change a master plan that you've thought out for over the years just because somebody comes up with an idea that at that moment, is more beneficial to that applicant. So we need to get back to plan and control growth, number 1. Number 2, we need to get back to the quality of life that our residents expected. When I knocked on those 3,000 doors, many, many people told me there's a lack of order and cohesion in our community. The culture has changed. We don't see as many police officers on the street. We don't see as much cleanliness. And we don't see as much focus on keeping our community, the vision being the one that we had when we created the city, making it greener, cleaner, well-planned community. So the second thing is to go back to that quality of life that our residents expect. And the third thing is transparency and really an understanding that our residents are part of this community. They are, this is not just me as mayor, the elected officials, the men and women that work for the city, or even the, whether it be the police department or the public information department. It's the residents who really, allow this to be a great city, and the businesses, So we needed to get back to transparency and ethics. There was a strong feeling in the community that City Hall and the government was not a government that was being efficient and effective, and worse than that, was not being open and transparent to them. So I think we need to get back there. I mean, we had a charter vote on a position which has been approved to have the equivalent of an inspector or charter manager's position, and we haven't filled that. And it's been 2.5 years after the residents voted for that. We got to do that. We need to get back to ordinances that say that people need to have an opportunity to get as much information as possible, as easily as possible. And we have to finish things effectively and efficiently. So those are the three main reasons, and I think that the infrastructure has to be improved vastly. In particular, we have a problem when it comes to traffic. Three very basic problems. Number one, there's so many people come to work between Monday and Friday that it's probably the numbers are near, you can hear between 100 to 125,000 people. So there's more traffic during peak hours, in particular Monday through Friday. Number two, our city has a lot of golf courses, which is good, but it's also bad because it's large pieces of land where there are no quarter-line roads like you might see in the city of Miami or other cities. And then the third thing, we have a lot of closed communities, which also adds to some of the difficulty. And really the fourth, and probably as problematic an issue as anything else, is we're surrounded by the 826, the 836, and the Turnpike. That's all wonderful for growth because it helps our business community grow and it helps our residents grow. But the problem is, again, with that growth comes issues such as infrastructure deficit. Some of it we're trying to correct. I think there's three ways that we can deal with it. And number one is obviously, and most importantly, I think we deserve a seat on the Metropolitan Planning Organization, the MPO, where technically if you're over 50,000 residents, you should have a seat on there. We are over 50. We deserve a seat on there. And the reason why that's important is because that's where a lot of the tax dollars allotted to transportation projects are determined. And while there may be 13 commissioners, a number of other mayors, an appointee from the governor on that entity, if we're not at the table, very difficult to maybe have to make a great difference. Number two, we need to be much better in communicating with our federal representatives. Mario Diaz-Balart, whose office is here, along with Marco Rubio's, but Mario Diaz-Balart is heading the committee that deals with transportation in Congress. So we need to have much better communication with our federal representatives, our state representatives, who a couple are in very important positions in the House and the Senate, our governor, who had an opportunity to visit us a couple of weeks ago, and most importantly with our county mayor and the chair of the county commission, because the dollars that help fix most of our roads, because most of our roads are county or state roads, are going to be coming from those sources. So we have to have much better communication. And I think in time we will, and we're starting to do it. We had an opportunity now to finally work on a project that hopefully MDX will be funding of opening up 82nd Avenue, connecting it all the way outside of Doral, which will ease some of the traffic on 87th. So that's the other way that we need to deal with it. And the third way we need to deal with this is we really need to bring in a group of experts that may be very creative to consider, what can we do to improve some of our transit options. We also have something that we're going to hopefully start soon, which when I was mayor the first time, we used to do, which is meet with the mayors of the other municipalities on a quarterly basis to see how we can coordinate efforts on things like transit. Because the reality is that whatever happens in Miami Springs or Medley or even Hialeah Gardens or Miami Lakes, and many times, or even the city of Hialeah, impacts our traffic and some of our ability to grow. So we're going to have to deal with that in that multi-pronged approach. Growth is going to happen, and the final component of it is we're finally starting to see is we're finally reaching out to our residents. We had our planner this week have a meeting with our residents on what the master plan says today, what the process is. We need to go back to following a logical master plan where there's a balance between commercial, industrial, and residential, and that the planning is logical. And that is up to the council and the staff to make sure that we take, we review that existing master plan or some of the changes that have been made to make it more consistent with the vision of the council and the elected officials.